Hey everybody, Captain Kyle here, and I'm going to talk about the new Hasbro reveals for new Transformers that are coming out. Now, they just had Hasbro Pulse First Friday on February 4th, 2002 to talk about Transformers, and they did show us a really cool sneak peek of the video game, which looks like Doom with Transformers, which is kind of cool. Gotta say, I'm not much of a gamer, so while I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there who are gonna love it, I'm just not gonna probably see it unless I happen to go over to someone's house who has it. They also showed us Sleepy Time, or Calm, with Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime narrating, which looks interesting. It sounds like they used some of the stuff from the movies rather than having him re-record, but it's still a neat little thing. But I want to get to the toys. And the first thing they talked about was Studio Series Wave 2. And the first Transformer they showed was Arcee from the Bumblebee movie. A very cool toy. I have to hand it to the engineers at Hasbro because they had CGI bots that they had to base these toys on. They didn't have alt modes. The only alt mode you really saw was B127. So the Arcee looks very cool. She's got two weapons. She's kind of an homage to the motorcycle versions of her character, but at the same time has that G1 vibe. So a definite plus. I will be getting this toy, absolutely. Now another from the Bumblebee first scene that everyone went gaga about, including me, is Ironhide. Very similar to the Ratchet mold that they've shown us, and I'm sure it's going to be very similar in transformation. Minor changes, of course, to make them distinctive, but it's essentially a repaint. Now, I gotta quickly say, I don't mind repaints. There's supposed to be millions of Transformers on Cybertron. Some of them are going to have the same basic mold, but their personalities and their choices will change the deco, change their colors, change their paint scheme. There might be little additions here and there. I actually love the fact that there was a G1 Bruticus plus a G2 Bruticus plus Ruination and Baldigus, because if you have a team that's very effective as fighters and merged into a giant robot, why wouldn't you make multiples? Why wouldn't you have 10 teams of Constructicons who could all merge into versions of Devastator? It only makes sense. And from a assembly line standpoint with the Quintessons, it would make sense to use designs that work. But moving on, I do like this Ironhide. Very cool in both modes. Looking forward to it. Now they're going back to the Transformers the movie stuff, which is very cool. And the first one they showcased was the Voyager-sized Junkyard. Basically a retool somewhat and repaint of Wreck-Ar, but with a different head, different side panels, different places you put the wheels. Very cool, and we need more Junkions because they were everywhere. So I like the fact that we have Junkyard. I also have Scrap Heap and Junk Heap and Detrius, so it adds to my army of Junkions. Looks cool in both modes. The robot mode might look slightly different from the movie version, but at the same time, because of how he transformed and these panels popped up, it's actually a very good representation. And of course, for all the Dinobot fans, we have Leader Class Sludge. Now, this is very cool. Articulated, looks very cool in both modes. Some people say he should be a little bit bigger, but in the show, he wasn't really that much bigger than the other Dinobots, even though an actual dinosaur might be much larger than, say, a T-Rex or whatever. Scaling has never been Hasbro's strength, but even in Dino mode, he has some articulation. You can move the head up and down, mouth opens. Apparently he has a 3mm port inside the mouth, so you can put a flame effect in there, which is cool, though Slag was more the one that breathed fire. And definitely a very cool figure in robot mode. And you can store the gun underneath. But I'm definitely looking forward to Sludge. He is definitely one that I'm going to get. Now, these are not available for pre-order yet, at least not on the Hasbro site. Keep an eye out. I'm going to be pre-ordering them, absolutely. Now, they also have recently introduced the Core Class studio figures with the good Shockwave and the Ravage, who, yes, his alt mode I'm not fond of, even though it does fit into the Studio Series Soundwave's chest. It's just, I think they could have done better. But with the Core Class line comes a human character. Now, we don't get a lot of human characters in Transformers. We did get Kicker at one point with his transforming motorcycle and various figures of Kicker. But this is, instead of being included with Sludge, they decided they wanted to make an extra $10.99 off of us, and they're releasing Spike as a separate character. Now, it's actually cool. You can turn his head. He's got some good articulation. You can transform him into his vehicle style mode. I am definitely going to get it, and you can attach some flame effects that it comes with to the jets on the back of his arms that kind of also propel the vehicle in vehicle mode. So another very cool thing. So those were the Studio Series things that they showed. Legacy was kind of cool. And actually just the other day, I was thinking, are they going to take any BotCon characters and make them into new figures? So of course the first one that they show is the Predacon Sandstorm, who was originally a BotCon exclusive, which I did have and sold along with many of my Beast Wars figures way back when I got hit on the head and didn't know what I was doing. Now, it was a good move financially, but I do miss a lot of those figures. There's another figure that I'm going to be talking about a little bit that actually prompted this thought about Sandstorm. I like the fact they're using the new mold, but they gave him the mutant head instead of the regular head that they used on the Kingdom Scorponok. And it's a really cool color scheme, very reminiscent of the BotCon one. Very bright. The purple metallic is very cool. And he does have a Cyber Bee. He does have missiles. So a neat figure overall. He is going to be a Walmart exclusive. In fact, the Legacy figures I'm going to talk about are all going to be Walmart exclusives. Next is Night Prowler. Now, Night Prowler is not one that was ever released. He's actually based on a Beast Wars era prototype, and he's an Autobot instead of a Maximal, which is an interesting twist. Obviously, he's a Cheetor repaint. Again, I don't mind repaints, but with a different color scheme and a different backstory. I do like this new Night Prowler. Definitely going to go into the cat collection, as they were talking about. My cats will love him. I hope yours do too. Now, they didn't go with the mutant head because they did go with a mutant head with the Shadow Panther, so they decided to go with the Cheetor head, which I don't mind. Cheetor can have a cousin who looks very similar. And then rounding out the Beast Wars Legacy stuff is Buzzsaw, who is obviously a repaint and retool of Waspinator. Now, Waspinator used his mutant head in the show, and that's what we pretty much used with the toy to make it match the show. Buzzsaw, who had the same two heads as an original toy, was usually depicted as using the robot face, and that's what they used for this Buzzsaw. I like the color scheme, it's kind of neat, and definitely a worthy addition to the collection. So that finishes up the Legacy line. And now they have a couple Beast Wars Vintage figures that they're re-releasing, also Walmart exclusives, and the first one is Scorponok. Now, I've actually already picked him up. I saw him at Walmart, had to grab him. Little expensive compared to the old mega-sized figures. Still a great homage to the original. The coloration is a little different, they said in the stream. I don't have an original one to compare it to anymore. But he's a great figure, great homage to the original, and when I saw that, I was like, I wonder if they'll do a Sandstorm. Well, apparently not at this point as a vintage, and it could be problematic since it was originally a BotCon exclusive. But keep an eye out, I am going to be doing a versus review between this reissue Scorponok and the one from Kingdom. I will also be doing a versus review for the next one, which is Tigertron. So they did a reissue Tigertron. Now, when I started collecting Beast Wars, I actually got a lot of my figures through sites and got the Takara versions. And this is the Takara version that they've used the color scheme for. The original Tigertron, which I didn't know at first, and then when I found out I did actually get one, was a little bit more of like this off-white, yellowish, not really matching the colors on the screen, but had his own types of colors. More like the mutant Tigertron colors. I wasn't a big fan of those colors. I preferred the Takara version, and I'm kind of glad that in this rock bubble packaging, they have decided to go with that color scheme, which is more in keeping with the show. So again, keep an eye out for a versus review. I'm going to do the new Kingdom version of Tigertron versus this reissue, and it should be a lot of fun. And there'll probably be some fucking swearing. All right, next we have the Red Series. Now these are available as of recording right now on Hasbro Pulse. And the first one is Knockout. Knockout, very cool character from Prime. He comes with all these accessories. Some people don't like the Red Series. They prefer their Transformers to actually transform, which I totally get. but at the same time having articulated figures that can really get into different poses, and you can pose them very dynamically, and they have all these additional features. It's kind of cool. It's not a replacement for having an original Prime Knockout. It's not a replacement for having an actual Transformer toy, but it's not a bad thing to have. If you like the Red series, you might want to get Knockout. The next one is Ultra Magnus, and here Hasbro just basically repainted an Optimus Prime. I'd love to see them release an Ultra Magnus in the Red series with the armor, but this is like, he's not wearing his armor. It's like casual Friday Ultra Magnus. I'm gonna dress down today. And he comes with the same energy axe as Optimus Prime in different colors, extra hands. Still a cool figure. I've gotten a number of Ultra Magnuses in this style that are basically like the original. The cab portion is just like a white Optimus Prime. I even have the Ultra Magnus statue, which is Prime but recolored into Ultra Magnus white colors. It's a neat statue. I have it on display very proudly. I actually won it for free, but that's another story for another time. So that finishes out the Red series. Then they went into the buzzworthy Bumblebee, and some people have already been finding these, which I'll talk about in a second when I get to the one people have found. But the first one they're coming out with is the Cybertronian mode Bumblebee. Now, they gave him a different head than the last version of this toy. It is essentially a repaint. If you miss it the first time around, this might be for you, or you might just want it for variation. He's got the robot head that he kind of had when he was a Jeep, not the battle mask, and it's pretty cool in both modes, though they're giving us a lot of Bumblebees. My Bumblebee collection is probably gonna be just as big as my Optimus Prime collection at some point. Still a cool figure, I'll probably pick him up. But the next one is actually one that kind of irritated some people. It's Cup. In the buzzworthy Bumblebee line, they've re-released Cup. It's a redeco of the Studio Series version. And it's actually more cartoon accurate, movie accurate, which is great. Instead of having the translucent or transparent plastic, they're going with full solid colors, which makes these figures look a lot more like the actual cartoon representations and just makes them look more solid. I do like the Studio Series version, but this is a cool recolor. But some people are like, why didn't they just release this for Studio Series? Well, they wanted money, which I can kind of understand. I mean, I do like recolors, but usually I like recolors that are different characters so I can build out my army. This is the same character. It's a nicer version. Look, these molds cost Hasbro quite a bit. All the molds that they need to do to create these figures. So if they can get an extra figure out of it with different colors, that helps them pay for the mold. And it keeps them in business, which I'm all for them staying in business so we can get more Transformers. But I can understand why people would be a little irritated. I will pick this up, but I do kind of wish that this had been the Studio regular series one instead of, you know, an additional one. And finally, we have Cliff Jumper, which is basically a recolor of the Cliff Jumper that they released. I think it was in one of the War for Cybertron lines. I'm too lazy to look it up, but it's a recolor of the previous Cliff Jumper we have, but again, with no translucent plastic. He does look a lot more cartoon accurate with the gray legs and the painted windshields. So definitely a cool figure, and yes, I'm gonna get him. And I can see him as being a little bit different dynamic than the War for Cybertron line, because those were G1-ish, but not necessarily G1. But a lot of people felt that this reveal was disappointing. There's only really a couple new figures that we've seen. The majority of the stuff is recolor retools. And I understand that, but it's still more Transformer characters, more Transformer product. I don't mind it so much, but that's just me. What is your opinion? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of the reveals. Which one's your favorite? Which one is your worst disappointment? I am a little disappointed that they didn't just put Spike with Sludge, though he doesn't really interact with Sludge in the movie all that much, so maybe in the final scene? But leave a comment if you liked my breakdown of these new toys. Please give this video a thumbs up, share with your friends, do the subscribe thing. We'll talk to you next time. Keep an eye out for some new Versus reviews coming out, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll see you next time, and as always, have fun and good hunting.